Everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson, and we are the Last Nighters. You can find us on the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel. You'll find the show notes and more at lastnighters.com/168, as we're going to be talking about Jon Favreau's Chef from 2014. And this is a recommendation by our friend Jared Wall of Breaking Liberty and Anarcho-Land, who has been on with us several times in the past, including movies such as Gold and the Breaking Bad movie that came out recently. You were on for Hotel Rwanda, and there was another thing right around Gold. I want to say we had you back to back. Captain Phillips maybe was a thing. I really should go back through our catalog right before we do an episode and make sure I have all the notes in front of me, because I'm like,
I think you hit all of them. We did Three Idiots too.
Oh, right. Three Idiots was the most recent one. So welcome back, Jared. Why don't you suggest where people can find you now that you're no longer on social media and all those such things? But are you still writing, and do you still have content for people to read and be persuaded by?
I haven't really written too much. I've actually been working on a project with a fellow traveler in the libertarian world, putting together a book about nuclear weapons and nuclear war, but that's not exactly ready to talk too much about yet. But it's a cool project that I've been working on. But yeah, I mean, my work from the past is still available at breakingliberty.com. It's my favorite TV show of all time, Breaking Bad. I kind of went through and just wrote a whole bunch of essays trying to pull libertarian Austrian economic themes out of that show. So I've got actually 2 free ebooks available for download at breakingliberty.com. I've also got some other stuff at anarcholand.com. And my most recent publication was at actually Scott Horton's libertarianinstitute.org, where I wrote a piece about Rwanda, which is one of the reasons why we talked about Hotel Rwanda a couple of episodes ago. So that's all what leads us to here today, I suppose.
All right, well, very good. And I know that we had a couple of different movies in mind, and you landed on this one because of Robert, who works in a like a pop-up style restaurant, a Thai restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I knew Robert would have a nice connection to the movie, but I mean, even aside from that, it's just one of my favorite movies. I've watched it a number of times. It's probably honestly in my top 5 favorite movies. I really like this movie. It's one of those really feel-good movies. I love the soundtrack. I love the music. I'm a sucker for a good musical montage, and this movie's got at least a couple of them. I like Jon Favreau. I think Sofia Vergara is very underrated as an actress, and I think the kind of the way it presents entrepreneurship is something that could be very attractive. This is a movie that you can watch with young people, you know, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13-year-olds. There's nothing wrong with, there's no excessive reason why any young person shouldn't, and it could inspire a young person to, maybe pursue a different path than the normal one. They see that, hey, following your dreams can lead to something good. I mean, even though the movie definitely lacks in showing the dark side of the government regulations in the food industry, which I definitely am excited to talk about. Not only that, but the movie is also kind of like a commercial for Twitter, which kind of annoys me.
It was back when Twitter was actually like useful.
Right? Yeah, I guess
2014.
If it ever was.
Yeah.
But no, I love the movie, and I mean, I'm glad that we've got somebody in the food industry to talk, kind of share real world insights into it. But I mean, there's the movie shows a lot of really good examples of, voluntary and mutually beneficial transactions, things like that. So, and entrepreneurship in general. So I really like the movie for a number of reasons.
All right, very good. Well, I appreciate you being here, and we'll, of course, have links to all of your previous appearances and Anarcho-Land and Breaking Liberty on the show notes page for this one. And how we usually start this off is with the old Google description, so I'm going to pull that up now in my old man ways that I do. So here we go. Chef came out in 2014. It's rated R. I think it has a lot of curse words in it. So maybe your comment about the 8 and 9-year-olds, they probably heard all those words, so it's okay. It's on the old Netflix now, though I didn't have it, so I bought this movie, made it available to Robert and myself for the low price of $5 plus theft, and we both got to watch it. So it got a 7.3 on the IMDb, 87% Rotten Tomatoes, 68% on the Metacritic, and 90% of Google users like it. The description reads, after a controlling owner, played by Dustin Hoffman, pushes him too far, Chef Carl Casper, played by Jon Favreau, quits his position at a prestigious Los Angeles restaurant. As he tries to figure out what his next step should be, he finds himself in Miami. Carl joins forces with his ex-wife, Sofia Vergara, best friend John Alberto Leguizamo, and son MJ Anthony to launch a food truck business, and the venture provides a chance to reignite his passion for cooking as well as his zest for life and love. Came out in May of 2014 in New Zealand. Director is Jon Favreau, budget of $11 million. And it's a pretty decent movie. I think it's got some pretty big name A-listers making some cameos in here. We got the Scarlett Johansson. And if anything, the lesson that I learned from this is you can be a disheveled, overweight guy, but as long as you've got the big pee-pee, and that is passion and personality, you can get the hot chicks. Robert, what's your opening salvo on that?
Yeah, Sofia Vergara and Scarlett Johansson, both lusting after Jon Favreau. I mean, this is another fantasy film. Much like last week when we talked about A Devoted Woman, this movie features another fantasy trope of the schlubby guy that has these smoking hotties that are somehow attracted to him. I mean, yeah, I guess, maybe. I think it has more to do with Jon Favreau being a successful director and making a lot of friends in Hollywood. And he's able to get all these friends of his in his movies for very little money. What did you say that the budget on this thing was?
11 million bones.
Yeah, so everybody's working for scale or something like that. I mean, Dustin Hoffman doesn't get out of bed for less than a couple million. So, he's only doing it if he's got friends that he's coming out for. Yeah, the movie itself, though, it presents it's a fun entrepreneurial movie that presents it in a very positive light. It glosses over all the dirtiness. It glosses over. I mean, there's just the one scene, like I was talking about in the intro, with the cop harassing them at South Beach, but it doesn't talk about all the regulations in time. And of course, why would it? I mean, this is a positive movie that's trying to have fun. It's mostly a story about a father and his son who he's trying to connect to. More about how the son wants to connect to his dad than really him. It's really him kind of trying to follow his dreams, and then it just so happens that his son is also into it. I thought that was a little bit weird. Like, it really should be his father trying to find ways to connect with his son, but really it's the son who's being the adult in the relationship, and he's like, oh, we both enjoy this thing. Here, I can do this with you, and we can connect on a personal level. And he's like, what are you talking about? We do that all the time. And that was just weird, the way he's like this man child and his like 10-year-old kid is the actual adult. But okay, I'll take it. I mean, the character needs to be able to go somewhere, I guess. And so, yeah, Favreau, I've never been a big fan of his acting. I think he's competent, but he's not like a guy that's ever going to be talked about as one of the greats. And I think he's sufficient. And I think that the son is sufficient for a child actor. But I mean, I would rather Dustin Hoffman have a bigger role. I'm a huge Dustin Hoffman fan. Every time he's on screen, he's amazing. Especially when we did, what was that Will Ferrell movie where he was incredible in? I forget.
The Stranger Than Fiction.
That's it, Stranger Than Fiction. But every time he's on screen, it's amazing. And then Scarlett Johansson's a lot of fun. I mean, he has a way of attracting talent, and that's cool. This one I want to talk about scene by scene, almost not every scene, but there are scenes that I have in my notes that I do want to discuss. But those are really my general first thoughts. It's a fun movie that talks about entrepreneurship in a very positive way by a guy who the main character is passionate about this thing he likes to do, and he's good at it, and he cares, and people respond. And personally, I think that's always what's attracted me to the food service industry, because you have that ability to make something as best as you possibly can. And every single time you make something, it is a work of art, essentially, because you're putting all this energy and thought and process into it to make it the best you possibly can. And then people are willing to trade their fiat currency dollars for it. And it's a beautiful thing. And they appreciate it. They value that sandwich more than they value their $8 or whatever they're paying. And I don't know what the Cubano market is in Florida. I bet you it's probably a little more saturated than it is around here. But I bet you if someone brought a Cubano truck to my area, they would do very, very well. Anyway,
well, maybe you can be that guy. You can be the Cubano guy. You know,
I am doing that. That's a possibility if I wanted to branch off and do my own thing. But we are currently bringing something to this area that doesn't otherwise have it.
Right. Though to be fair, you're not really appropriating right now, and to do it right, you really do need to be appropriating. I mean, right now you're doing a Thai restaurant with a Thai person preparing the meals. So
true.
It's
not really appropriating their culture. Yeah, this movie is fairly problematic, right? I mean, wasn't there like some restaurants in like Portland that got trashed because some white guy was making Mexican food, and they were like really offended about that?
Yes. So anyway, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can certainly talk about this on this, and you've already brought up a few of them, and I want to bring Jared in on just a moment. But my initial reaction to this movie is it's cute and it's fun, and there's a bit of a story here, and there's really a lot of like little things that are worthy of discussion. Though I don't think that the plot overall like really works for me. So while I had fun watching the movie, I'm like, just kind of a road film, like, oh, they went from point A to B, hijinks ensue, and then the movie's over. So
yes.
Jared, I want to go to you a little bit and get like, what is the thing that really stands out to you? Is it the moments where there's like these entrepreneurial interactions and this passion and this providing for others that really drives you to like this film? Or is there something more to the story overall that you really like about it?
No, it's just a fun film, and I think music in movies is a big aspect of one of the things that I appreciate about them. I really like the soundtrack of this movie, and I like the moments of the father and the son relationship, and when they go and see the grandpa playing his trumpet at the Cuban restaurant. That was a really nice moment. Moments in the truck, with the cornstarch on the balls, and the Vine video, the 1 second a day video that he snips together. His marketing acuity is pretty cool. The son's marketing acuity is pretty cool. Again, that's kind of just the fact that they were making a movie length commercial for Twitter, in a sense, but I don't know. It's not the most amazing movie ever, but it's just I just really like it. It's fun, and I like the idea of a food truck. I wish it was easier for them to exist. And I like kind of sex appeal of the way they portrayed it in this movie. I guess maybe sex appeal isn't right, but with Sofia Vergara in it and Scarlett Johansson, and
I think it qualifies for them, but
yeah, it qualifies for them. Not so much for Johnny Fav.
Well, and the ease about that truck, and he was able to just go into business like right away. That was pretty sexy from someone who has been struggling to build his
that's kind of what
business
I
over
meant
the past 2
by sex
years.
appeal.
It is a far cry. I wish it was that easy. I mean, maybe things are that easy in Florida, but if things were that easy in Florida, you would probably see almost every food taste tailored to on every street corner, and it probably is not the case. But as a side note, how much adrenochrome is John Leguizamo snorting into his veins?
Oh, I know, right?
For him to look exactly the same as he did like 40 years ago or whatever. He's been in Hollywood for at least since the late 80s, early 90s, and he looks identical to how he did before. What's going on there? What sort of time machine does he have? Or is he just directly inserting like young kids into his body? I don't understand.
Yeah, my wife and I were watching this. I'm like, Johnny Leguizamo looks the same as the first time I saw him.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So there's a bunch of stuff related to this, and you're right, it does totally gloss over like all the regulations and permission slips that are required. And of course, these are always imposed by the established interests in a geographic area that have sit-down restaurants, and they don't want competitors who have a lower overhead. So they want to put barriers to entry up in front of them. And so they advocate for these things. And Jared, I know that you're a big fan of the Tuttle Twins book series. They have a book related to this called The Food Truck Fiasco, which highlights a lot of these issues that and sort of the permutations and the mechanisms behind the scenes that you can kind of apply even beyond this, where essentially entrenched interests get the ear of government and utilize that leverage, that power to prevent competitive upstarts from horning in on their territory. And so I will put a link to that on our show notes page, of course, and I will use your Tuttle Twins link, your affiliate link. So anyone who buys the Tuttle Twins book series or the Food Truck Fiasco from the show notes page on this here episode will be benefiting Jared. And why don't you speak to that? I know you've read this book to your kids or are going to. I know you've read the book itself. And Robert, I think when you were here, I think you read it with my kids, if I recall, maybe last summer or the summer before. It's a really good book. The whole series is all about interacting with real world situations and how the government like fucks things up, essentially. But go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, it's as you say, the Tuttle Twin series is fantastic, and that book in particular. I mean, obviously, it really ties in well to this movie, but it's the kids. They've through the series they've owned the Tuttle Twins kids. They've owned lemonade stands, and they've done theaters and put on plays and all kinds of kind of entrepreneurial things. And then they get into the idea of a food truck, and then they start getting more and more pushback and not being told that they're no longer able to do things that they used to be able to do. And then the more they dig into it, they realize that this sit-down restaurant establishment owner is in cahoots with the local government and basically just feeding regulations to the town council or whatever it is to make it so that his competition is stifled, if not eliminated completely. So all of that aspect of the food truck business and of the food industry in general is completely ignored in this movie, other than as Robert alluded to a couple of times, the scene with the cop who gets on, does the Lady in the Tramp shtick with the Cubano sandwich and makes a move down the street. I mean, as little as what that cop did, I hated that cop so much just because of like the attitude and the like, hey, I'm cutting in front of everybody. Hey, I'm coming up. Hey, let me press a sandwich. Hey, let's take a whole bunch of pictures. Oh, by the way, move down the street. Otherwise, I'm going to arrest you and throw you in prison and compound your truck. And
yeah, and when I first saw that scene like starting to develop, I thought, oh, they're going to have him not have the permit. They're going to have him have this confrontation and like be shut down and have this like social media shaming of the police or something. That's what I was hoping was coming. But no, yeah, he actually had the permission slip. And I was really hoping for that Ron Swanson moment, like, yeah, here's my permission right here. I can do what I want.
And it was worse than the banality of evil. It was your friend, Mr. Evil. It was, hey, I'm evil and I'm going to threaten you with violence, but I'm your buddy and we're going to have fun with it.
And have
It
selfies.
was gross. It was like gaslighting you. It
Gross
was like,
is
hey,
the word for it.
we're going to be doing some cute shit and we're going to be all cool about it. And we're totally bros. But by the way, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to stick a gun up your ass. It's gross.
Yeah.
By the way, John Leguizamo is 56 years old. He looks 25. Unfucking believable.
Yeah, he's got something going on. So that was a thing I thought was going to happen, and another thing I thought was going to happen. I thought that there was some foreshadowing when they go to that supply store and he gets all the equipment for the store or for this truck, and after cleaning it out and having the son do a thing. And I want to talk about that, Robert, because there's a scene in there that was like this power play between father and son, but he rewards the son for all the hard work with a chef's knife. He's like, you got to respect that knife. You got to take care of it. If you take care of it, it'll take care of you. It'll serve you for many years. I thought that was foreshadowing something happening with that knife. And then nothing ever happens. So I was a little looking for something that wasn't there.
Well, and I think if you were to watch The Mandalorian, I think you would recognize his writing. It's not the most well thought out, well structured writing. I was disappointed when I was watching some of The Mandalorian, and I've seen a few other Jon Favreau films where it does set up things that don't pay off. And you're right about this plot. It is kind of just a series of things happening in a kind of a road movie. There's a little bit of a plot with the food critic at the beginning and then the food critic at the end. But other than that, it's really just kind of about the father and son and their dynamic. And I think that's probably what you mostly care about as an audience member and their developing relationship. But yeah. Okay. Do you mind if I start going a little bit scene by scene, and I want to talk about a little bit about the scenes and then kind of give a little bit of context, or at least some in way that they relate to my experience in the food industry? Wait,
are you saying that nearly, a couple hundred episodes into this show, you want to bring some structure to this? All right, fine.
Listen. You say what you're gonna say, and then you say it, and then you say what you said, and then that's how you talk in a podcast radio format. Okay.
What I'd like to do is have you bring up the scene, state your piece, and then go to our guest, and then me. So we each get a little moment on your point.
Okay. So
you talk and then I talk.
You talk. That's how this works. What is this?
Wait, is it my turn?
Whose turn is it?
Okay. So the first scene I want to talk about, it's not a big deal, but I thought it was interesting that when Dustin Hoffman hired on this chef, he kind of is semi-autonomous, and they talk about this deal that they had. Seemed to be some kind of a verbal contract for Favreau having control over the kitchen, the ability to decide the menu, and that seemed to be big for him, because he's a guy that goes out and he goes shopping in the morning, and he buys all the ingredients, and he gets ideas about what to cook that day. Like, this is a very much fresh produce, like market to table experience every day is kind of thing. Like, so he has this kind of restaurant where they probably open just for dinner. Maybe they do a little bit of a soup, salad, lunch thing, maybe a light menu in the lunch, but it seemed to be mostly a dinner establishment where they're like a fine dining. We only open our doors at like 4 or 5 o'clock, and that's it. So this is a guy who really cares about his food. People are coming to pay a premium price for things they can't get anywhere else. And it seemed to me that Hoffman I mean, obviously the movie's kind of played up for a little bit of conflict, but he really seemed like he was killing the golden goose from my perspective when he was saying, well, I could have anybody cook this menu. You're nothing special. You probably bring a little bit to the table, but I mean, you're second in command here. He could probably do it. And then it seemed to me like you were messing with a Picasso and telling him how to paint and saying, well, your understudy could probably do just as good for, these heathens that we serve. They're not going to be able to taste the difference.
All right, I have comments. I have comments.
You've got comments? Okay. Good. Because it seemed to me that it was a breach of contract from what they had talked about. Now, obviously, Favreau is free to walk out at any time when Hoffman comes up with this shit. He's like, well, you're changing the deal. And he's like, pray I don't alter the deal more. And so I thought everybody acted properly in that sense, in the sense that, okay, this contract is now null and void. I'm free to leave. And Hoffman is like, well, I guess I'm out of chef. And anyway, for Hoffman to essentially lay down the law and not kind of de facto fire his head chef, not really, but saying, hey, you can walk. These are the consequences. If you don't do what I'm telling you to do, you're free to leave, is essentially saying, do what I say or walk. And to do that, when you have a full house, more reservations than they've ever had, and the sole reason people are coming that night is because of this Twitter blow up where they're coming to see fireworks. They're coming to taste this food that he's like hyping up. Like, I'm going to bring it like it's never been brought in before. I'm going to bring this menu that you've never tasted before. Everybody's coming for that experience. I would think Hoffman's acting ridiculously here, not only for that fact, but for the fact that you are reducing your kitchen staff by one, but a very, very important one. And I know from experience that just throwing that off, and you've got, and they showed in the movie, and they did a good job, the craziness in that kitchen. All these orders plowing in. These tickets are just printing, and everybody's scrambling to try and get any food out of there and get food into people's hands. That I've lived that experience, not in a fine dining experience, but in my restaurant, and it is a nightmare when you are shorthanded. Okay, Daniel, your thoughts from all that word salad that I just threw at you.
All right, so there's a lot going on here, and it's very reminiscent of the movie we did a couple of weeks ago called La La Land, where the piano player is hired by the restaurant owner to play a certain style of music, and he wants to play jazz, he wants to improvise, he wants to mess around, he wants to show his artistic flair. Similarly, we see that with Jon Favreau here. However, I think that they kind of don't really lay it out as if Favreau has been experimenting this whole time. It's sort of like the critic makes this point where Favreau was 10 years ago daring and creating new things, and he was his boy. He was doing things that hadn't been done before. He was out there going to the markets and finding those things, those inspirational things, and he created this menu that was exciting and new, and built his name on that, and he got this raving review. And Dustin Hoffman hires him, and they open this restaurant, and they establish a menu, and then they stick to that menu for 10 years. Now, yes, I can totally understand that after the menu being that way for 10 years, that it would get pretty boring. But as the restaurant owner, Dustin Hoffman, he's like, this is my bread and butter. This is what's making my bills get paid. It's filling up my restaurant. People are coming for the tried and true, and they come here. They know what they're going to get, and they're going to get it, and they're going to be happy, and they're going to come back. So how they present this in the movie is sort of like how you sort of presented it, where Favreau's this maverick who's going to the market and finding things, this inspiration. Yeah, he was 10 years ago, but it seems to me that he's been doing the same thing, the same menu for about 10 years. And only when he gets wind of this critic showing up, that's when he first wants to change the menu. This is what happens the first night we're sort of introduced to him. And Hoffman's like, no, you need to stick with the main menu. of course, the critic gives him this scathing review, and then the Twitter beef ensues because he's an old man, get off my lawn. He's kind of inept and doesn't understand that he's not tweeting a direct message to somebody, but he's tweeting at somebody so everyone can see it. So then this Twitter beef sort of blows up into this, this event, right? And so these people are coming here. So I will agree with you in this second time that Hoffman doesn't see what's really happening, that the people aren't there for the tried and true this time. They're there for the fireworks. They're there for the new exciting thing. But Hoffman does have a point in that it's his restaurant and he wants to stick with what's paying the bills. And I think that this is a misstep on his part, but it's not as if Favreau for the past 10 years has really been lighting things on fire. He did a thing 10 years ago that did that, and then he kind of rested on that. And so that's another thing that's kind of an interesting point, that a lot of times entrepreneurs will break into a market with an innovative idea and then get stale. And then they need to reinvent themselves. And I think that's what Favreau needed to do here. And he sort of needed to run into this situation where he lost what he had to then reinvent himself. So, yes, I think in this second instance, Hoffman didn't understand what was at stake. Favreau did, but it's not like Hoffman was necessarily wrong in that it's his restaurant. It's, he kind of missed what was happening at that time, but he wanted to make his restaurant still be a functional restaurant, basically.
Yeah, but he is, like you said, he is the stale entrepreneur at that point. He's just resting on his laurels, happy with the business he's getting, not looking to innovate.
Right, and in a way, he's sort of pushing Favreau into that, and we're only seeing what we're seeing, but Favreau's kind of seemingly been okay with that, maybe bristling a little bit for those 10 years.
It felt like there was some conflict that wasn't just popping up out of nowhere between those two. It seemed like Favreau, to your point, he wanted to mix things up when the critic came, but it seemed like they kind of had a history, much like in La La Land. It wasn't just the first time that he had been trying to play some different songs. It felt like he was an artist that was too confined by this stuffy restaurant owner that was just wanting to play it safe, where he wanted to take more risks.
Right. And in a way, he's sort of paying his dues by going through this 10 years of doing what someone else wants him to do. And I think that plays into this built up, pent up, wanting to do something dramatic and something different and express himself and utilize the skills that he has and unleash them on the world, not working for someone else. And I think that's one of his driving kind of inspirations, is providing something that he wants to better people's lives with. He knows that the food that he makes is so good that people are going to remember it. He's that passionate about it. He's that skilled at it.
And they will come out of the woodwork to find it.
Right, but he's not there right away. It takes him he's got to put in all this time and effort, honing his craft and getting really good at it. He's got to have that passion for it. He tries to make that point to his son, like you had mentioned earlier in some of the pre-show. He it's not like the son can just walk in and be like, "I've paid my dues." You kind of got to go through these trials and tribulations and face these frustrations to really kind of hone that diamond, so to speak.
Well, and cooking is, you can learn, you can be a fairly competent chef with a fair, just a couple of days of training if you're just only cooking a few things. But Favreau is like an artist, and he knows all the things. He knows everything at the produce market, how to cook each thing, how, probably 10 different ways to cook every single last thing. And can experiment and play and has a passion for this stuff.
Yeah, he knows all the notes and all the, instrumentation, what this part of the orchestra is going to do over here and what this thing's going to do over here. Yeah.
It probably took, 10 years or, at least multiple years doing all kinds of different things before he could probably confidently call himself like the Poppy chef or whatever he calls himself or whatever.
El Jefe.
El Jefe.
Yeah. You know who would be good to get some commentary from would be Dan Reed, the culinary libertarian, on something like this.
He might know a thing or two about cooking. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jared, what response do you have to Robert's points that he was making, if you can recall them from 20 minutes ago?
I mean, I don't know. I guess just to kind of maybe continue where it seemed like the two of you were kind of taking it, the passion aspect of what Chef Casper El Jefe brought to it, and I guess kind of speaking to his maybe acting abilities. I know also on Netflix there's a whole series that he's done now called Chef, where he's actually going and meeting with real chefs all over the country, and I think even over the world, and like learning how to cook various things with them, and like him cooking that grilled cheese in that scene of him cooking the grilled cheese for his son. That's a kind of a takeaway scene from the movie. And he, watching outtakes from this movie, he spent a good like week with a chef learning how to make the perfect grilled cheese, and like learning how to lift it up and look at how the butter was congealing to the bread, and adding a little bit of butter here and there as needed, and things like that. And just those little details that he kind of, I guess, brought to the table for this movie, and the study that he did for his character, which I guess is commendable to his craft. And not only that, but then there's the scene, and maybe this kind of explains a little bit of him getting hot chicks, but there's the scene where he's with Scarlett Johansson, and he's like, "Oh, what if I just cook you something?" And she's like, she like melts in his hand. Like the ability to, they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, but I think that road can go the other direction too. A man who can cook really well is probably a sexy thing in the eyes of a woman. And then, I mean, that's really all I have to...
but thank you. It's possible, yes.
There's still time out there for you, Papi Cubano.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, I mean, that's all I have to really say about that aspect. As far as his fight with, I don't really think there's much for me to add to that. I'd kind of like to talk about the fight with the critic, and that kind of served as a launching point for his whole venture down the food truck path, and then it served as a nice bow on the end of the movie when they kind of partner up at the end, and he's like, "No, listen, it was a complete misunderstanding. I thought we were having fun." He's like, "You don't pick a fight with somebody who buys ink by the barrel, that kind of thing. I've got X number of Twitter followers and this huge food critic empire, more or less, that I've built up." He's like, "What were you thinking? He's like, "I thought I was sending you a direct message." And
it's like trying to tweet
the
at...
critic was like, "Well, I didn't know that," and it just blew up into this crazy thing.
Yeah, it's like trying to tweet at Michael Malice or something, and he just fucking crushes you and blocks you.
Right. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you guys would have to say about that part of the plot. I know that's probably one of the small parts of the plot, but yeah, what else?
We can definitely talk about that, but to your previous point about Favreau seemingly having a passion for food shows, that came across in watching this. It doesn't surprise. I did not know that he also has a food show, but it came across. It seemed to be a movie made by a guy who loves traveling food shows.
And food.
And food. I mean, the guy, he's a big dude. He obviously loves to eat, and who doesn't love delicious food and traveling around to taste the different amazing food in different places that you can get? So I can totally feel that. And that very much seemed, like you said, as part of his craft and his study for his character.
He ate a lot of food, yeah.
Traveling around and learning how to cook and eating all that
The
great
best
food
in the world, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's another part of the movie that is appealing to me, is that I've got family in the Louisiana, New Orleans area, so I've had that experience of, your first beignet, or your first beignet in 3 years type thing, so that's part of the movie that I liked. But have you guys been to New Orleans? Have you ever had a beignet?
I've
just had one at the Food Circus at the Seattle Center Pavilion.
Okay.
And it's probably a pale comparison, but I have had something that goes by that name, and it's from a allegedly New Orleans inspired
it's
restaurant.
Probably legit then.
To your other point of him picking the fight with the food critic, I think the movie almost addresses that, doesn't it? Where you can just pick a fight with the intent of losing, or even knowing that you're going to lose, but you know that you're doing something so sensational that it's going to attract eyeballs.
Yeah,
and you're going to blow up. Like, so that people that do something spectacular that fails spectacularly, you're still going to get a lot of cachet off that. So we see all kinds of videos of people hurting themselves or things exploding or failing miserably. We still, those people still get, massive followers and that kind of thing. So it felt very realistic in that sense. I don't know if they're going to get a whole lot of, the movie's plot didn't seem super realistic in that. I don't follow that world, so I don't know about some famous chef having a beef with a food critic and then a whole lot of people being interested in that per se. But I can definitely understand how someone might go at a celebrity only to get slammed on by either the celebrity or the celebrity's massive fan base, just with the intent of getting eyeballs and drawing attention to yourself and whatever they happen to be doing.
Yeah, and he kind of fell into that. Maybe not purposefully, at least in the movie, but yeah, it certainly happened because, he had that meltdown that was on video. Like, people caught it on camera, and that's what really blew it up.
It's molten.
That was a big man baby performance of his. Yeah.
And he was, like saying, "You're not getting to me. You're not getting to me." No,
he's not getting to me.
Well, you obviously did. Yeah.
Clearly not self-aware in that instance. Yes.
Right. But I mean, it ended up working out for him. Now I don't know if that is like super realistic. If you saw somebody melt down like that, then would you, I don't know, like, want to go to their food truck if you heard that they had a food truck? It seemed a little weird.
But if in learning about the guy, if you see him, just even learn his name, and then you learn about this guy and this history, maybe a little bit, you might be a little bit more incentivized. Like, so one thing that we struggle with is, and the same thing happens in this film, is that the demand far outstrips the supply. Now, the movie doesn't show angry customers. I wanted it to show angry customers, but this movie is such a positive thing that, they're like, even after they're waiting in line, there's this massive crowd, and he can clearly only make a few sandwiches at a time. Clearly. I mean, it takes like a couple of minutes each, and you can probably, they're only at a time. Maybe they could press like 3 or 4. I don't know. But it's still obviously not enough to serve this massive crowd. Now, in my business, we are limited by the amount of food we can produce at any given time. And when there is a lunch rush or a dinner rush and the whole town wants to come get their food, there's only so much food that can come out of a kitchen at any given time. So there are customers that will wait, 30 minutes, an hour for something they ordered. And sometimes it's just like a simple little thing. And you're like, how could it possibly take an hour for this one little thing? There's no way. But what you're not seeing behind the scenes is that you are like 30th in line. and all these other people are waiting longer, and they are, before you. But in this movie, at one point, Jon Favreau says, "Thank you for your patience," to a customer as he's handing them the sandwich. And I have been there. I have said that phrase so many times. I appreciated that he said it. I wish they had showed some angry customers, but there is a real issue with having too many customers all at once and not being able to meet demand, because you'll make some people happy, but you'll make a whole lot more annoyed and upset, especially when you like take their order and then have to sit around and wait. Maybe it's a little bit different with a food trailer or a food truck, because you're basically you're just waiting in line and they don't know your order yet. So you're just waiting for the line to slowly progress to the point you can get to the order, and then you get your food relatively quickly. But still, you're sitting around waiting for a real long time, and it doesn't show all the customers that would go, "Man, I've been waiting in line for like an hour. Do you want to get some tacos instead?" There's like no line over at the taco store. So then they just walk away. That would have been more realistic. I know it's more about a positive vibe in this film. But again, these are the real choices and real pressures that you face especially when you're bringing this popular item that people can't get anywhere else. They got nowhere else to go. So you're going to have most of the customers be like just super ecstatic that they're even getting this food at all. But then there's going to be those people that are having a bad day, and they're going to take it out on you when you're just working as hard as you can to serve them. It's an interesting dynamic.
All right, I'm going to give you the Scrooge McDuck. Work smarter, not harder.
How would you do that, sir?
So in the food truck, they have like 4 menu items. You guys, as far as I know, have a lot of menu items. I think that lends itself to length, because people have to distribute their limited resources and time allocated to it gets stretched thin. Whereas if you had fewer items and maybe something that was more immediately available or kind of always available, like you had this giant thing of X and it's like a very popular item.
You're talking about our business model. That is our business model, sir. To produce a large quantity of X and then to immediately hand it out to people.
All right. So where are these half-hour, 45-minute, hour-long waits coming in? If this is your business model.
Because you get to a certain amount of time. You get to a certain point where everything is empty.
Okay.
And there is a list of things that need to be prepared. And let's say it takes 10 minutes to cook cashew chicken. And then it takes 10 minutes to cook pad thai. And it takes 10 minutes to cook crispy beef. And it takes 10 minutes to cook the special. And it takes 10 minutes to cook.
Cooking area, right?
And there's one cooking area. And somebody orders the crispy beef. And that's fourth in line. Well, that's a 40-minute wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're preaching to the choir about lowering the number of items on the menu. You are absolutely preaching. I have talked about this many times. But let me tell you that the tendency, the inertia in the food business is to expand the menu. It is to offer new items. And people, especially customers, really, really get annoyed when you take any item off the menu. Mm-hmm. Whenever you take anything off, you're taking off somebody's favorite
Dustin
thing.
Hoffman's argument. They want to come and get the thing that they want to get.
You are taking off somebody's favorite item. So you want to mix up the menu. You want to add new things to it to attract more customers, give them something they haven't had before, because returning customers want to taste some new things. Like whenever we do a special, it's a weekly special. And sometimes it's so good. And people are like, it's so good. Why isn't it on the menu all the time? And you go, yeah, it probably should be. But we can't do that for everything, because then we would have 50 things on the menu and you would be waiting 2 hours or 3 hours for your food, and that would make nobody happy.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're not involving Jared at all. I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, we're getting way down into all right, how do we operate a food truck?
Yeah, getting into the weeds. I feel like I'm talking about law and just getting too deep into the weeds, and nobody's going to be interested in what I'm talking about. It's okay.
Yeah, long story short is it sucks to run a food business with the government the way it is.
Yeah.
But thank you for doing so, because I like buying food from people who prepare it for me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah, we do get a lot of compliments and a lot of people thanking us for being there and adding to their choices. And people do appreciate the effort. But, there's always going to be somebody who's having a bad day. It happens.
Yeah, understandable.
Sure.
So we are actually bumping up against time, unfortunately, already. And I know, Robert, you haven't yet asked your is he a good father question. So I know that's coming, but do you have anything else, or Jared, do you have any other topics you want to bring up before we start to do the winding down here?
No, I mean, I'm pretty satisfied. I think I think the one thing that I might add is that if you wanted to look at the we kind of mentioned that how they portray entrepreneurship is almost, with a little bit of sex appeal, how easy it is and how rewarding it can be, and how you can ignite your passions and get paid for it too. And but I mean, if you look a little bit deeper into that, you kind of can, maybe from a little bit more cynical point of view, you can say, well, look at how hard it must be to succeed entrepreneurially. Look at everything that this Chef Casper had going for him. He had seed money. He had his ex-wife's ex-husband, basically give him the truck. He had very effective marketing, which not everybody can find. He had his son running Twitter pretty well. He had some notoriety from that blow up that he had with The Critic. He had been YouTube famous there he got his 15 minutes. And he also had a really quality product, and all of those things together combined to what made him a success. And not everybody who wants to get into that business is going to have those four things. So they're going to have to, make up for lacking one or two or three of those things elsewhere.
Yeah, and he gets the girl in the end and repairs his relationship with his son. It's like,
and he's got a whole new business venture and partner.
Yeah. And people his enemies are throwing money at him. Yeah, I mean, he's got it going okay, pretty good. Most
over
businesses
glamorize
fail
it a little bit.
Most businesses fail within 2 years. This guy seems to be doing it pretty well, though.
Yeah, and I guess that was my point earlier, is like, it's a cute movie and it's a fun movie, but it's also kind of like not realistic, and I don't know what the message really is other than the individual scenes that make certain points, So it does seem a little fantastical. Like I sort of made a joke, big pee-pee at the beginning, the passion and personality, because Favreau's a funny guy and he's got a good personality. But getting those hot chicks as a result, it is kind of you're entering into fantasy land a little bit here.
For sure. It is a movie made in Hollywood by Hollywood people, so it's not going to be the most realistic thing. But it comes across as a movie made by a guy who is passionate about that thing, like the food shows and good food, and finding that random weird food that, everybody talks about, but, it's not like that is your typical necessarily tourist food. It's that hidden place that all the locals know about, but not just someone driving through would know about. It's the joy of discovery, of finding some amazing new thing, because food is such an immediate short-term thing, right? I mean, you can't just replicate it. Like Marie Callender's, makes frozen foods and that kind of thing. And like chefs will have their own frozen food line or whatever. But it's never, you all know it's a pale imitation of what you can actually get at.
So I thought you were going to go Star Trek with the replicator.
No. Yeah. You can talk about your communist utopia some other time. But in the real world, where there still takes human beings to make this stuff, you have to go out and find it. You have to travel. You have to talk to people. You have to go online nowadays and look at reviews and that kind of thing. But you can't just go to your local store and find X, Y, or Z. That you have to go to these places, and that's something kind of magical and the joy of discovery and that kind of thing. That's something still kind of wondrous about the food industry, as opposed to something that's available for anyone, anywhere, at any time, like something you just order off Amazon or something. You can't order a meal created by Papi Cubano off Amazon. So, yeah, it's a fun thing that there won't be a monopoly on. There's not going to be a monopoly on, any kind of food item necessarily, like there is on, well, I mean, government can destroy it and make it so that only McDonald's could make it, or Taco in the fast food wars or whatever it was in that ridiculous movie. But yeah, that's what I like about food. There's a lot of things to like about food. Passion, you can put yourself into it. You can make it the best you possibly can. It's an art form, and you can't, I know that people guard their recipes, but there's still,
especially the Colonel,
an unreplicable ability, entity aspect to it. You know what I mean? Does anybody know what I'm talking about here?
You're talking about the Colonel with his wee beady eyes.
Exactly.
He's got a secret recipe, makes you crave it nightly.
I'm glad you're paying attention to what I'm saying.
All right, so Robert, big time question for you: is Jon Favreau a good father in this film?
You're gonna ask me? You son of a bitch! That's my thing.
The tables are turned.
I think he's a pretty crappy dad at the beginning, obviously. I mean, he takes the time to spend some time, but he's not really present. He's more like, hey, we're going to go do this thing. Meanwhile, I got my mind. I'm thinking about something else. I'm not really paying attention to who you are, what you're about, what you care about, what you're into, how we can, connect. And it's more about him. The kid was more of an adult than he was. I understand he has to have an arc, and he grows and he changes and he becomes more of a father through this process and spending his time with his son. He sees them as more of somebody he's able to connect with. But I think he's overall, I understand you have to have a flawed character at the beginning and then he learns something, blah, blah, blah. But he seems to me to be a pretty crappy dad. Not that, especially since he was like, I don't want to take my kid out of school. It's like, no, you need to go to the government re-education camps. You can only do this on the weekends. You can only do it, while you're on like summer break or whatever. I would have liked him to be like, hey, you can be an entrepreneur. You're already, and he did say that. He was like, you're already like a good chef. You not only do you the ability, the potential, but you're already good. You're already putting in the work. You're already learning. You can do that.
And in that sense, pain, he burned himself. He's like, you want to keep going? Yeah.
In that sense, I thought he was a good dad. So I think he had his ups and downs. Overall, I don't know. I can't really evaluate him, but I thought, yeah, he went from being quite poor, and everybody has their moments of not really, being 100% present in their kid's life and that kind of thing, I'm sure. But he seemed to be, and he was going through some crap too, obviously, of course, right? But he's losing his job and trying to figure things out. But I wasn't impressed with his parenting. Let's put it that way. I thought there were many other film dads like Captain Fantastic and other things like that, where I was very impressed with the dad. So I'd give him like a C+, B minus.
Trending up towards the end, though.
Trending up towards the end. Like in the beginning of the film, he's at a C minus, and then maybe he's up to a B minus at the end.
Okay, all right. So Jared, your thoughts? You've got kids. Now they're not as old as the kid in this movie, but is Favreau a good dad in this, or does he become a good dad, similar to Robert's take?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of have a hard time judging another dad and his dadding abilities. He's there and he's putting in effort, and yeah, there was moments at the beginning where he kind of was, borderline pushing him off, pushing him to the side, but he was going through some real bad, crap at that time, and it's not really a good excuse to push your kid away. But I don't know how I would deal with that kind of a situation if I was in those shoes. So, saying he's not a bad dad because of it, I'm not really comfortable saying that. That being said, this is a fictional character, so I'm not like, don't have any like moral qualms with it or whatever. But I don't know. That's just kind of, I guess, how I feel about it. And I think he, the whole trip, he was an excellent dad. He was encouraging, and he was, he was trying to give him some life lesson type things, and they had fun together, and he was praising him for all the work that he was doing with the marketing and with the Vine video that they put together. And then
well, there was the one scene where he's like, I need you to clean that like dead cat out of that pan, like that rotten, been in there for like a year, probably reeks to high heaven. And they have this like battle, right? This,
it was like an alpha type stare down almost.
Yeah, and that stood out to me as, I mean, I've had, all right, real talk here. When I was living in Seattle in an apartment, I had a friend of mine, and he would come over like a couple times a week and cook Chinese food. And occasionally, we'd be out in late at night and then go to Chinatown for late night food, or he'd cook and whatnot, and then we'd watch college football on Saturdays. Anyway, the point is, occasionally there would be something cooked at odd hours, and then I wouldn't be aware of where it ended up. And so one meal ended up being left in my oven with the oven turned off. And about a week to 2 weeks later, there was some sort of funk, some smell that was emanating from this. And you could smell it in the hallway. And like, I was like, what the hell is this? Where is it coming from? Because I was a, mid-20s bachelor, did not use my oven personally. I had one, but I didn't use it. And it was only upon discovering this that it was in the oven, and then opening it and getting punched in the face by the stench. And I can only imagine what the kid must have smelled when he opened the fridge in this truck for, however long it's been in there. I mean, I'm sure that our listeners have experienced something that's been rotting in an enclosed space for a long period of time. I mean, it is literally a gut-wrenching situation. Like it wafts into you, and then it makes you nearly vomit. So in experiencing the thing that in my lived experience, I took the kids' reaction to this as, yeah, just throw that fucking pan out. Like, there's no saving this pan. And I took Favreau's response to that as, no, you fucking clean that pan because I'm bigger than you, as a dick move. Because Favreau clearly didn't have the information, right? That this thing was rotten, right? This pan is ruined, right?
But was it? But was the pan ruined? I mean, it was
in
tainted.
The story. It's not.
The soul was tainted, but it's a stainless steel pan. It will survive. Right?
I'm burning that pan.
You're burning the pan. Nuke it from orbit so we can be sure.
That's right.
All right. Well, yeah, that was a pretty crappy move. But at least he didn't subject his child or himself to a cross-country trip with stranger. It was just the three of them. They all knew each other. They were safe when they were crossing the country. So in that sense, I got to give him a bump up. He kept it. I mean, I don't know. They didn't show where they slept. They weren't like sleeping in like truck stops or anything like that. But they were probably just sleeping on the truck. But I got to say that it was good of him. He had safety in mind. He did.
Okay. All right. So the last point I'll make about him, my take on his fathering, is that early in the film, he isn't interested in really being a dad. He sort of is a dad, so he's there doing dad motions, but he's more interested in making a name for himself and building his career and working in time with the son around that. And I think that's maybe what led to the breakup. Like he's divorced from the mom, and she seems pretty well off. So it's not as if Casper's like earning money to pay child support. It's more like Casper's earning money to make a name for himself, to build up his reputation, to eventually get his own restaurant or something like that. So he's very focused on work and putting the kid on the back burner, so to speak. But I'm doing the dad jokes tonight. And it was only when, he broke down and lost that position and then reignited his passion, and then his son could go along with it, and he earned his stripes with him, that they bonded. And he actually saw the son as the individual that he had become and realized that he's actually a pretty cool guy. And so I think that's what sort of mended the relationship. But it was Favreau, like, so focused on himself in sort of a selfish way, I think, especially for having had a kid. And maybe even not being grown up himself. Like he was still hanging out with his coworkers and going out to bars and banging the
hostess.
The hostess. Yeah, and not that there's anything wrong with that when you're in your 20s and earning your stripes, but you're married and you've had kids, you should probably grow up a little bit. And I think eventually he does do that. And of course he ends up with remarrying the wife, because I think he's changed from that, the type of person he was before. So now she's like, okay, he's matured enough to actually be here and be, the person that we need him to be.
He does seem like a bit of a immature character, but I will say I don't necessarily fault him for worrying so much about his career. Like, his career is what pays the bills and feeds the kid, right? I mean, and feeds the family. That's not necessarily the most selfish thing to be.
I think normally you'd be right, but I think that in this movie, it's presented as the wife is pretty well off, despite whatever Casper does.
True. I mean, to your point, it did feel more like he was worried about his career as a part of his ego and less about a way to provide.
Right. So, like if it's a providing thing, then it's totally way more understandable. Like I experience this with my kids, like they're I don't want to say upset, but like they don't like it when I go the 20 feet out into my driveway to go into my office, and I'm like, well, I got to do something for other people so that we get money in exchange so that we can pay for things that we want, though. I mean, they're like freaking little mini economists. It's crazy, but they're still, bothered by it. And in fact, earlier today, and we're getting long, I'm sorry. They were trying to find things that they don't use anymore that they can sell so they can contribute, to like buy food for the chickens and like help us like pay for things. Like it's crazy. It's kind of awesome. And I feel bad, like their heart is definitely in the right place, and I don't want to reject it, but I also don't want them to like give up their things, because they'll get like $5 for their stuff, and it $5 to me is like, okay, what am I going to do with that? Unless you're supporting us on Patreon, then $5 is like amazing. So hit us up at Last Night Sitcoms Patreon. You get pre-show and post-show bonus content, Kathleen Turner Overdrive, all that other fun stuff, and you get to feel good that what I just said was a meaningless $5 will actually be super meaningful. Anyway,
that's right. Smooth, Daniel. Smooth.
So smooth.
So smooth.
Just knife skills, just chopping it up, dicing it up. Yeah, super nice.
You got your chef's knife, and you're taking care of it. You're sharpening it, keeping it sharp.
Yeah, and Favreau did have some pretty good skills. Like to Jared's point, he did go through some chef training, and it's very demonstrated in this film. He looks pretty adept at it. And
his chopping skills and that knife is super sharp, and he is just chopping those veggies up like nobody's business.
Yeah, and like not even looking, like, well, that's a little risky for me. I mean, I hurt myself getting vanilla ice cream out of a tub with a butter knife. I stabbed through my hand, so I definitely don't have the knife skills. But anyway, so smooth.
So smooth.
All right, let's get into a final summary and review, and let's give it how many chef knives out of 10. Jared, you want to give your final summary speech?
Sure. Kind of like we've been saying, it's a fun movie. It's got its strong points and it's got its weak points for sure. I like it a lot. I enjoy, as I mentioned, I enjoy the music in it a lot. I like the just kind of the relationships within it and the character growth. I like that it's food based. I like that it's entrepreneurial. I like that it shows some good examples of mutually beneficial transactions. I like that it goes through New Orleans and mentions the delicious beignets from Cafe Du Monde. And it's just it's a fun show. There's some funny scenes. There's some kind of as Robert put it, gross scenes. And just overall, it was a fun car ride across, or a fun food truck ride across the country, which is essentially which I agree with you guys. I think that is what the movie is, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I liked it. I'll give it there it is lacking in its portrayal of how much the government sticks its nose into the food industry, which is unfortunate. But I guess despite of that, it's still a good movie. That's not what the movie was about by any means.
Maybe we should rate it a number of permits.
I'll give it 7.5 chef knives.
Okay, all right, that's cool.
Very
We
good.
just got a comment in our Golden Circle Facebook group. It's a super exclusive club for past guests and for Patreon supporters. It says, I just watched this last week. I love the idea, but the thought of them having to get a damn permit to serve food in every city they stopped at would be a major hassle. So
For
definitely
No
agree
joke.
with that.
Yeah, the
No
whole
joke.
sex appeal of that whole entrepreneurial endeavor goes away real fast when you start learning about the reality of it.
Yeah, and sometimes those permits are like $60, $70, $80, and you already have your overhead, your employees you got to pay, you got the gas, you got
And
all
like you
the
mentioned, you got to pay
materials.
taxes in each state that
Not
you
in the food. Then,
operate in.
absolutely. Then you got to pay the taxes that on the money that you took in, and
It's not
the
like these things
operating
are
costs.
instantaneous either.
No,
It's not like you're just going to roll into town.
You're just going to roll into town and set up shop. Nice try. That's never going to happen. The local commissars are going to make you wait unless you've already applied like weeks in advance, maybe. But it's what was it? What was it movie like? Life is Beautiful, where the commissar was like, "Yeah, maybe I'll approve this. Maybe I won't. Maybe you'll have to wait a couple of months to be able to open your bookstore or not." It's a lot like that. I mean, it's not as bad over here, but it's essentially you are waiting at somebody else's pleasure to actually do something for you, give you their permission. Anyway, I will launch into my final summary and review here. It is a movie that succeeds at what it tries to do. It tries to just be a fun road film that kind of tries to tell a little bit of a heart story with a family father-son story. It kind of tries to be a Twitter commercial, which it succeeds at quite famously. It also tries to celebrate food and food culture, and that is probably its most successful thing. So I would say it's not a perfect film. I think the acting is competent, although I think the high-powered stars, who are stars for a reason because they have amazing charisma and acting skills, that Favreau is able to bring into his movies, like Downey Jr. and Dustin Hoffman, are shine, in their respective scenes. It would have been nice to get them for more, but I'm sure that, they're going to do a favor for a friend. They're only going to give them like a day or maybe two at the most. They're not going to be on set the whole time while you're shooting this little $11 million movie. But, it succeeds at what it tried to do. I'm not a huge fan of Favreau's writing. I think he doesn't put in the effort to really work with like a writing partner, to really have his scripts really worked over, he seems to be like a first or second or third draft guy tops. And that's, work however you work. You're far more successful at it than I am. I can't really fault you. But it just seems to be that I'm not super enamored with your scripts, Mr. Favreau, which is totally fine.
Look at you just shitting on the work of the creatives, you critic who provides no value.
Exactly.
Like inward
You want to go to war with me?
You don't
I buy ink by the barrel.
It's molten.
Anyway, Mr. Favreau, you can come on the show anytime. It'd be a lot of fun. Anyway, your movie, I'm giving 7 sharpened chef's knives out of 10.
All right. Pretty good. Not too bad. Jared, I appreciate you suggesting this movie for us. I think that it is a good movie, and it has a lot of like really good points. There's probably more points that we haven't even touched on that I think would be worthy of discussion. But overall, I think that it's well done and it's well shot. The food looks amazing in this. Like my wife and I were watching this, and we're like, that Pavlovian response where the dog starts drooling with the sound of the bell when they're fed a steak, and then you take the steak away and they just hear the bell, they start to drool. We knew that this food was on a screen, but we were still kind of salivating at the thought of it. And it looked really, really good. And just how it was shot with the food prep and everything, just really well done. I think the story is sort of like lacking a little bit. They try to do maybe too many things. There were a few setups that didn't have payoffs, but of course you can't really turn this into a 3 or 4 hour movie, unlike next week's movie that is a 4-hour movie, and we'll be getting to that in just a minute here. But overall, I think that this is a fun movie. It's well done. I'm a fan of Favreau as an actor. He's a good director. He did Elf, which is one of my top films. He did Swingers. He did Maid, which is like Swingers' bastard cousin. Not a lot of people have seen it, but Maid's pretty funny. I'm surprised Vince Vaughn actually didn't make an appearance in this. I know that they were real tight for a long time and probably still are, but anyway, it's a good movie. I highly recommend it. I'm going to give it 6.5 permits out of 10. So it's recommended. People should check it out for a fantasy film about the joys of entrepreneurialism with none of the downside.
None of the downside. You just want to start a business and you just start it right up. Why is this so hard? Why aren't more people doing it?
Well, I think what we didn't get about the movie is that it's a libertarian utopia. There is no government in the movie. There's no permits required, and all they had to do was clean the truck and put some new equipment on, and they drove across the country and had great success. And they marketed on the very open and easy to build your business on, social media platforms that are available to us.
With no dissent being stifled or no censorship. I mean, this is all well before deplatforming. This is 2014, which is ancient history.
Yeah,
I think Alex Jones had been deplatformed by then, no?
You take that cop scene out, that South Beach cop scene out of this movie, and this is just the most wild libertarian fantasy movie of them just starting a business and it being amazing and everybody loving it and then no drawbacks ever and it's not hard.
And all their customers dying because there's no regulations.
Yeah, they all fall down dead because he poisons them all with his terrible food. Yeah. And he just goes from city to city, leaving a trail of dead bodies, and nobody talks about it. Nobody finds out about this poison truck at all. The market doesn't regulate
it. Leaves any Yelp reviews.
Yeah. He's deleting all the Yelp reviews. He's scouring the internet, deleting everything that says bad about him.
He hires that publicist to just delete all the videos and all the bad comments off of the internet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Anyway, that's a good film. Good to talk about. Good conversation.
Yeah, Jared, thank you so much for suggesting this one. I knew that Robert would have plenty to talk about. We kind of went off on a tangent for like a good 20 minutes in the middle there. We tend to do that. So sorry, it's something we do. Just, I don't know. We're just not very good at this.
No problem at all. It was fun to join you guys as it always is. And I look forward to the next one as always.
Yeah,
next time I'm going to have something new to plug on the next show. I got something in the works. Actually, separate from the nuclear weapons book that I alluded to in the beginning. There's another project I got going on too that I'm excited to share with your listeners when it is ready.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. We're booked up through I think June-ish or so at this point. But just let me know whenever
Hey,
you're.
that's only 3 months away. I mean, hey, if every 3 months, that's 4 times a year. That's fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back. Just let me know whenever you're ready and whatever movie you'd like to do. I'd be game for another Bollywood film. Honestly, I thought that one was kind of fun.
That was cool. I was also thinking we could
movies.
return to Africa and do what's that Leonardo DiCaprio Blood Diamond?
Blood Diamond.
Yeah. I'd be good for that.
Yeah, probably.
All right. So Blood Diamond in July or something.
Yeah, and I'll let you do American Gangster with Keith Knight. I think that's an appropriate one to do with him, especially since, as you say, he's not really a movie guy. But he is into gangster movies. Then that's a good reason to have him on the show, and that's a good gangster movie.
Oh yeah, and there's a ton of economics in it, and a
in
ton
Vietnam
of
too. Like he'll have the history about the Vietnam and how there actually was drug connections with the military and the local governments there and local powerful
in the caskets. Caskets, supposedly. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. One final comment. Dan Reed, who we mentioned on the show, says don't underestimate the seductive power of cooking. So
that's why he got the hot chick. That's Sofia Vergara and okay. All right.
That's all it takes,
Mr. Reed.
She melted in that scene. That was that was good acting on her part. Like there was no doubt that she was like, oh my gosh, yes, please cook me something.
Cook me, you driver. Cook me.
Cook me, you big chef, you.
All right. So Dan Reed, of course, has the Culinary Libertarian podcast. Do check that out. He's a good dude, and he does great interviews and episodes and whatnot over there. He's been a guest with us for Ratatouille when Robert was out sick, and then he was also on for Mrs. Doubtfire for Father's Day last year.
Did you do a good one for him to do with him would be Burnt with Bradley Cooper?
Oh, I haven't even heard of this.
He plays a chef that's like going for Michelin stars.
Okay.
And it's a really good. It's probably Chef. The movie we're just talking about now, and Burnt are my two favorite food movies.
Okay. All right. Well, you heard it here, Dan Reed. If you're still listening, we're going to hit you up for Burnt at some point in the future. So anyway, speaking of the future, Robert, we're going to go back to the future and redo a movie that we did a couple of months ago, Justice League, but it's an entirely new film this time, and it's much, much longer. It is, of course, the return of the great Shaheen and the hashtag release the Snyder Cut. It's finally here. It just released today as we're recording this, as I speak, and we are going to try to watch it in time to record an episode just a few short days from now. It's going to be Justice League, the Snyder Cut, next week with our friend Shaheen.
Yes, the vastly, supposedly, at least visually improved. They fixed all the funny mustache CGI, and they fixed the grainy like PS2 graphics. So it's supposedly it looks a lot better. I can't speak to the story just yet. But supposedly the remake had like a $90 million budget or $125 million budget or something crazy, just to redo scenes and add special effects and that kind of thing. So hopefully they, I'm sure they're going to get a whole lot of eyeballs. Hopefully it lives up to the hype. We'll see.
Yeah, I can say that I have HBO Max because they said they were doing this. So that was almost a year ago.
And this is like the first time that the fans really like berated a movie studio to actually make something that the director was like, man, I had a movie, but I couldn't make it. And then the fans were like, make it. And then they made it. So
Yeah, yeah. There's gonna be a lot to talk about, but that mustache thing, I think that was a Whedon scene, and it's gone. So it's not even fixed. The mustache, it's out of here.
Oh, really? I thought it was still in and just fixed.
No, no. From what I understand, anything Whedon shot, gone.
Oh, okay, cool. We'll check it out. From what I've heard, that since Whedon basically just writes banter, the new one, this movie is almost banter free, or if there is any banter, it's all awkward and bad. So we'll see. I don't know. It's a more serious, I mean, Snyder is a serious guy. He's a serious visual storyteller. So you can't expect too many laughing out loud moments.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. It's probably going to take us like 4 or 5 nights to watch the whole thing, because we get about a half hour, 45 minutes into something, and it's lights out.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take me. We'll see. 4
Anyway,
hours.
Should be a good one though. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm especially looking forward to Shaheen. He was the first person to even mention Snyder Cut to me. That was a couple of years ago now, and I can't believe it actually worked.
We hypothesized about it ever actually getting made, and I think Shaheen was very much like, "No, it'll never happen," but here it is. So
yeah, it's the market, baby. Like, they had to come up with something to like make a splash, and that was a viral thing that was already happening. I think it made sense to jump on that, and
also we've got. I mean, if you've got HBO Max, we also have Godzilla versus Kong coming out soon. Is that on the docket too?
It's not on the list, but we could add it to the list, somehow squeeze it in. I know that when movies come out on HBO Max, they're only there for like a month.
Yeah.
And then they go away, and then they come back eventually.
Yeah, so it'll be basically out for the month of April, as I understand it. It's coming at the very end of March, and it'll be out for about the month of April. So we got some time to slide it in.
All right, yeah, we'll see. We're sort of like penciled in on a lot of stuff, so we'll figure something out. But anyway, Jared, last plugs for people where they can find you, and hopefully you can stick around a little bit longer. I know it's late, but we do the Kathleen Turner Overdrive for the Patreon folk, even though we're already super long. But where can people find what you're doing?
No problem. Glad to stick around for a few more minutes. I'm not really doing too much publicly right now, but there, some of my past work is still available at breakingliberty.com. There's 2 free ebooks available for download there that are a libertarian commentary on AMC's hit show. That's Breaking Bad. Again, my book found at breakingliberty.com or anarcholand.com. It was kind of my larger project at one point, but I've kind of put it on the back burner for now. But some of my old writings are still available to see there. And I also published an article about Rwanda recently at libertarianinstitute.org, Scott Horton's vehicle. And that is titled The Lie of Rwanda. So I think you got a link to that back on, we did a episode on Hotel Rwanda not too long ago. And that paper that I wrote, or that essay that I wrote, was a lot of obviously what I brought to the table for that episode.
Right. Yeah. And then Paul Rusesabagina, I forget, is that how you say his name? He got arrested shortly after that, and is now standing trial for some seemingly trumped up charges. I haven't really followed it a whole lot, but seems like he's been in the news again lately. So maybe the next time you're on, we can maybe follow up on him a little bit. That might be good.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, very good. Well, everyone, I know that we're already super long, so I'll just say go to ourlastnighters.com/168 for the show notes and more. For this one, you can find all of the previous appearances with Jared, including Hotel Rwanda and El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, Captain Phillips, and Gold, and there might have been something else in there. I know we talked about it earlier. Anyway, I'll start taking my...
3 Idiots.
3 Idiots. That's right. I take my... What's the old man medicine? Used to be like a funny joke like 10 years ago.
Viagra?
Good answer. Good answer. No whammies. Now there's senior moment. Senior moment. I'm having senior moment.
You got what Joe Biden's got.
Yeah, Bidenitis. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the Biden. You know the thing. Come on, man. Come on.
You know the thing. Come on.
All right, so yeah, do the thing. Support the show, man. Come on, just do what you think to do, and give us the review on the iTunes and subscribe on the YouTubes. Throw some money Robert's way at Trubster.com. Hit us up at the Come On Man, Patreon.com/LastNighters, and all the rest. And we'll see you guys all next week for Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut with the great Shaheen. And it'll be good. It'll be super good. So thanks again, Jared, and we'll see you guys all next week. Good night from last night, everyone. Peace out.